Okay, so for my next project, I wanted to make a radio control Wakefield. Alright, now the most labor intensive part of making a Wakefield is you gotta make them in ribs. And here's the way I did it years ago. I would make a little aluminum form like this of the rib, and then I would glue all the rib strips together with a little excess I could trim off later. And then if you sand carefully, you can make all the ribs in one shot. So here I made 50 ribs, alright? Now I'm not going to use these because they don't have the structure I want. I actually made these ribs 35 years ago. They've been sitting around. Maybe someday I'll use them, okay? So here's another option. What I did is I bought, Bob Holman has Bob White's Wakefield. I know it says coupe, but it's actually his Wakefield in kit form. The nice aspect of this is it's got all the ribs pre-cut, all right, for both the wing and the stab. So that really saves quite a bit of time. So that's what I used. The other part I like about it is that he also has these little wingtip guides, rib guides, all right, and what this does is it holds the leading and trailing edge at the correct angle, okay, so once you get these down, it builds pretty quick. Now I did make some changes over the way Bob does it, all right, so Bob basically, if you look at the plan here, you'll see he has polyhedral, all right, but I've had some problems with polyhedral lately, okay. Basically I have 3 different planes with polyhedral, and for all 3 of them the wings folded right at the middle. In spite of the fact that I have double reinforced ply, I was a little surprised they folded. Now I know I'm flying under windy conditions, but I think what happens is this, that I think the polyhedral transfers all the stress right to that middle joint, okay? On the other hand, I have some flat bottom wings with wingtip dihedral. Not one of those has ever folded. And I believe that's because the stress is transferred more evenly throughout the wing. Now also, if you look at Igor Vivchar's Prima, which I also have, he also has it flat in the middle and wingtip dihedral. So that's basically what I wanted to do. So here's the wing, okay, and you can see I made it flat in the middle, wingtip dihedral. Now I did extend the wingtips by about a ½ inch, alright, so it's very close to the Prima wing, okay. And I think if you look at this wing, I mean, I think Bob's perfected here, all wood construction. I'm not really ready to go to the high-tech materials. And this is basically all balsa except for 2 parts that are bass. So one is it has a center spar here, and the center spar actually tapers from the middle to the wingtips. It's balsa in the wingtip, alright, and that's in the top and the bottom, okay. And that really adds a lot of strength, all right? Now it's 1/20th inch bass, so what I had to do was get a 16th inch bass and I sanded it down to a 1/20th of an inch. This kind of came in handy for that. This is a paper thickness gauge I use for my indoor models, but this helped me to make sure it was exactly a 1/20th of an inch thick, okay? Now the trailing edge is a 1/16 by 1/4 bass, and I just sanded a little bevel in that, all right? Now, because the wing is really nice and thin, I was really worried it might warp or whatever with the shrinking and the doping, but it's dead flat. So it's very, very strong. Really nice design by Bob, okay? The only thing I do is I put in a little bit of washout in the tips, and washout means you raise the trailing edge a little bit. I raised it about 3/16 of an inch. The reason you do that is because if the wing stalls, the middle part will stall first, all right? And the tips will still be flying, and that keeps it from banking over and crashing in. So it really adds a lot of stability. I always put washout in all of my planes. Now the other thing I did that's a little different is the tips on this are compound curves. It's a little tricky to cover them without getting wrinkles. So I thought I'd tell you the way I do it. Now I think the problem is it's a little counterintuitive. You kind of want to pull the tissue or the polyspan in this direction to get the wrinkles out. The problem with that is it rotates the wrinkles so they're going in this direction. And polyspan or silk or tissue, they always shrink the most in the direction of the grain. So the way I do it is I kind of fasten it over here and then I pull it in this direction, okay? And that creates wrinkles, but the wrinkles are going this way. So then I work a little bit to get it smooth on the ends, all right? And it's wrinkled, but when I shrink it, I can get all the wrinkles out. And if you look here, it came out perfectly smooth, all right? There's no wrinkles whatsoever, even though there was initially when I made it. So it's really, really nice and dead smooth, okay? Now, the stab and the rudder, I also had to modify. So here's Bob's version. You can see he has dihedral in the stab. I'm not going to do that. The other problem, he has twin fins, and I'm making this radio control, so I can't do that. So what I decided to do is I took the wingtip form, all right, and I shrunk that down to use on the stab. Now I wanted to make sure that I could use all his nice pre-cut ribs. And then what I did is I just made a little form like this, okay? So the other thing here is I wanted to cover it with Mylar, all right? And Mylar, the nice part of that is you don't have to dope it, but the bad part is it doesn't add any strength, okay? So you really have to have a rigid structure in order to use Mylar. Now I noticed when I built Jim O'Reilly's coupe, he has it just laminated, the whole leading edge and the sides, and that's really strong and really stiff, okay? If you take 4 pieces of a 32nd and laminate them, that's stronger than an 1/8 inch plan as shown on the plan here. So that's basically what I did, all right? I used that form, and here's the stab. I think it came out pretty nice. Now you gotta remember, this is just all laminated strips going around the whole front end there, okay? So it came out very strong, very light, it's dead flat, all right? And I think there won't be any problems covering this with Mylar. Now for the rudder, I thought I'd do pretty much the same thing. So what I did is I took the form that I use for the wingtips, which is right here, okay? And this is just a 1/4 inch bass. I also like to polyurethane it because then things don't stick to it. And that's basically what I use to make the rudder. So I'm still working on that, but here it is so far, okay? You can see I have a separate fin I'm gonna cut off, all right? And I think I could just Mylar this again. So the last thing I gotta do is just make the fuselage and the prop and all of that. Now I don't have any particular fondness for rolling balsa tubes. So what I did this time is I just bought a Kevlar tube, got this from Starlink-flitetech, all right? It already has the little mount for the peg in the back. So all I gotta do with this is trim it to length. And then I also got a tailboom, which is right here. The tailboom also has a little joiner, so it's ready to go. This is carbon fiber, okay? It even has a stab mount. He's got another little end piece I'm gonna cut off there. I'm not doing it that way. But all you gotta do is join this with the tailboom and you're ready to go. Now for the prop, what I did is I also got from Starlink, nice high-tech prop. So it's got a nose ring. The nice aspect of the nose ring is that it's got little adjustment screws in here so you can make a very fine adjustment to the prop, all right? And then for the prop, here it is. This is a high-tech prop, and it's got nice, the bobbin just fell off, but it's got a little bobbin. It's a Montreal stop, okay? The blades are really beautiful. They're very thin, and they're glassed. Now, if anyone knows how to glass these, please let me know. I've done it with fiberglass cloth and epoxy, but it doesn't get as hard as this does. So these are really, really nice. I'm gonna make a set of my own blades based on this as well that I'll just use for spare blades. Okay, so this is pretty much ready to go. Here's the bobbin, it fell off. The other part I like about this plan is Bob gives you all the weights for all the components, which is really, really great. Now I noticed here that on his 87 in 2006, the wing was 57.7 grams, all right? So let's check it out. Here's my wing, and we'll just throw it on the scale here. Okay, and there it is, 57.2 grams. So this just shows it's very consistent, all right, if you build it accurately. All right, so I'm gonna finish this up and we'll get it assembled, and I'm looking forward to flying it. Okay, so here's the Wakefield. It's all done, ready to go. All right, so on the stab and the rudder, I did as before. I Mylar'd those. I thought that came out pretty nice. All right, it's nice and smooth and it's very light. Okay, now for the stab mount, I used a nylon screw that I epoxied in place, the same way I did it on the coupe. I mean, this is very light. And you can then use the bottom nuts to adjust the climb incidence and the top nut to adjust the glide incidence. Or if you don't want to deal with the VIT, you can just use the nuts to precisely set the stab angle. Now I also Mylar'd the rudder, and I wasn't that sure how well the epoxy was going to hold that on to the carbon fiber tail boom. So what I did here is in 2 spots I wrapped some thread that I held on with a little CA, and that gives the epoxy something to really bind to. So I think the rudder is on there nice and strong. Now I used a push rod, it's .047 wire. You can see I used a little hole down here, all right, because I don't want it flapping around. I also bound that with a little thread because in my experience, if you hit a tree or the fence or something, it tends to knock that off. All right, now this also comes with a little rear peg that screws in, which is very nice. All right, now as far as the equipment goes, it's the same as before. Let me get it up here. I use the Spectrum AR400 receiver, and I'm very happy with this receiver. It's 2.4 gigahertz, it's full range, and you know, I've had the planes practically out of sight, yet I've never had a single problem with this receiver. Alright? The only thing I'm doing differently these days is on the Servo, I'm using a Dymond D47, okay, it weighs 4.7 grams, so it's pretty light, but it has about 4 times the torque of the other Servo I was using. Alright, so this is a really nice Servo. It also works on 3.5 volts and up, so you can use it with a single LiPo. Okay, now the prop, it's a beautiful prop. I got this from Starlink-flitetech, and the same with the front end, has a Montreal stop. It also has a delayed prop release, even though I'm not using that right now. Okay, so for the whole plane, the total weight, you know, without the equipment was 172.6 grams, which is pretty light. And I wasn't really trying to build light. For me, it's more important to build strong under the conditions I'm flying. Okay, now with the equipment, it was 198.6, and that's perfect because, you know, a Wakefield's supposed to weigh a minimum of 200 grams, even though this isn't legal anyway because it's RC. But maybe someday we'll have RC Wakefield. So I'm going to get out and give it a try. Let's see how it flies.